Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be completing the assembly of the lid of the Nuremberg box. Even though there isn't that much to do, it is fairly time consuming and I just wanted to go over the process with you. Here you can see that I have the lock installed on the underside of the lid. It's just held in place right now with a couple of rivets, and that's because I'll be installing more rivets later as I install the trim pieces. These rivets are going to be going around the perimeter of the lock plates, so once I have all those installed, the whole lock will be very secure to the cover plate. You will notice as I'm working on the lid that there are already two holes drilled into the cover plate, and that's because these were the original two holes that I used to secure the lock to the original lid of the box, but I'm not going to be using those for that purpose, so I've drilled them out, and you'll notice some scarring on the other side of the cover plate, and again they show up as two holes here. For those of you who've been watching this since the beginning, you'll remember that this project started out as an experiment to see if I could build a mechanism by starting off with one part of the mechanism and building it from that point on. No plans, just building one part to fit the part that I've already made and then continuing on to the next one. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but now that I'm almost done, I'd have to say that I will never do that again. The amount of time that was wasted in this project just because I wanted to figure things out as I went along was really an eye-opener for me. So it was a good experiment and I'm glad I did it, but this is the last time you will see this approach taken to anything that I build. The first piece of trim that I'm going to be installing is the angled plate that covers the hinges on the back side of the box. So the very back of it is the plate that's going to cover the hinges, and it wraps around and it forms one of the trim pieces on the lid. The back edge of this trim piece is going to be secured by the two tenons that I've filed into these strips that are supporting the cove moldings on the edge of the lid. And here you can see the tenon before riveting. The slot's a little wide because I had to cut it a little bit deeper to shift the position of this plate up so that it would the front face would sit better on the cover plate. There is enough material to fill the entire length of that slot, but it is right on the outside edge of what you can get away with. Here I'm a little bit further along. I already have the miters cut for the back trim piece, and I've started cutting the miters for the side trim pieces. The back trim piece is not riveted to the cover plate at this point, so I can remove it to make any fine adjustments that I need to. Figuring out the location for the miters is pretty straightforward because both trim pieces lock into the edge of the cover plate very securely, so there's not really much chance of them moving around much. Now all you need to do is mark the location where the two edges meet. Here I'm using a framing square to mark the line, and I've marked it right across the whole piece. I'm not sure why. You really just need to mark the intersection point where the two edges meet. At that point, you're going to be cutting a 45-degree line and cutting off the excess. Be sure to cut on the waist side of the line and give yourself room to trim back to the line and make any adjustments that may be necessary to fit all the trim pieces together. And the same process is used to cut the last set of miters. You'll notice that I had to remove the edge trim piece that we just finished in order to be able to position the trim piece on the front edge. Before I can start riveting anything together, I need to mark the location of the inside corner of each miter. I'll be riveting each piece one at a time, so I won't have the other piece in position to help me figure out if it's right or not. So this gives me a visual reference to let me know that something has shifted out of position and I need to recheck everything. Once I'm satisfied that these marks are at the exact location of each miter, I'll be able to use these marks to set up the trim pieces for riveting. I've counterbored both sides of the rivet hole slightly, so that's going to allow the rivet head to form below the surface of the trim piece. So when I file everything flush later, it should be invisible. Once again, I'm using straight bar rivets, so the process of riveting is a little bit different than with a regular rivet. Normally, a rivet head is providing you the spacing that you need on the other side, and it's supporting everything so you can form the rivet on the opposite end of the rivet. Here, you need to start forming a rivet head on one side, then you flip it over, you start working a rivet head on the other side, and you work back and forth to evenly shape that rivet until it's set. Here's an example of the things that happen when you don't do your homework ahead of time. When I cut this miter, I wasn't thinking I just cut the miter all the way through, which is fine for the other two edges, but this piece needs to butt up against the flat piece, so I should have only cut the miter on the top edge and left the bottom of this piece square so it could run right into this corner piece and make a nice finish. Since I have nothing to lose, and I'm probably going to wind up rebuilding those two side trim pieces anyway, I decided to see if I could cut a corner off of this back plate and wrap it around to meet that miter. I know there's enough material there to do it, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to convince anybody that that was my original plan. So anyway, here's how it sits right now. I'm not 100% sure it's a keeper. I'll have another look at it in the morning and we'll see what I decide. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact me by using the email address that I have shown here. If you like the channel and the work that I'm doing, please consider becoming a patron. Every dollar you contribute will bring me one step closer to being able to produce videos full-time.